Good afternoon and welcome to RCI's Navshikhar channel. Our topic of discussion for today is the concept of inclusive education and the role of implementing agencies, especially the SSA. And to discuss with us on this topic, we have with us our experts, Dr. Rita Malhotra, who is a director of Amar Jyoti Center for Special Education Training and Indra Vidya Child Guidance Clinic, and Dr. Anupriya Chadda, who is Chief Consultant of Inclusive Education SSA. Now, before we go on with our discussion today, I would like to give a brief introduction of what inclusive education actually is. Education is the basic right for all children of all ages, genders, sex, ethnicity, impairments, etc. And inclusive education enables and ensures that all these children are provided a basic system of education which is common, that is to all the students. Now, we'll discuss the topic, and before this, I would like the viewers to please call us or for any relevant queries on the toll-free numbers that I'll just provide you. The toll-free number is 1800112008 and the number is 265-11613. The fax number is 265-11609. So we'll move on with our discussion. Ma'am, first, I would just like to ask you, what exactly does inclusive education mean?
Well, inclusive education really brings joy to all the children. And according to this definition of ILSMH in 1994, inclusion refers to the opportunity of persons with a disability to participate fully in all of the educational, employment, consumer, recreational, community and domestic activities that typify a society. Later on, Susie Miles in 2000 described inclusive education. Inclusive education, according to her, is more in tune with the social model of disability, which sees the system as the problem. The school and the education system as a whole are enabled to change in order to meet the individual needs of the learners. Now, this brings in the philosophy of inclusive education. It is to give equal opportunities to all for education, which means this philosophy has solid social and moral concerns. Legally, it ensures equality of educational opportunities. Morally, it reduces isolation and prejudice, enhancing understanding of deviations of behavior and talents. From socio-cultural perspective, it increases the contribution of persons with disabilities to the society at large. And educationally, it provides positive modes of teaching for all children, bringing the advanced technology and teaching strategies to special education to the regular classroom. The special education strategies developed in special schools are beneficial for regular students, and they learn much better by all those teaching strategies. All children have some physical or psychological, developmental and educational needs. In addition, children with disabilities have some special needs which must be met to enable them to adjust with the mainstream environment in which all children learn and grow.
Ma'am, so that means, as per you, inclusive education basically means providing equal opportunities to all students, all children, and with all kinds of impairments and any kinds of disability also.
Yeah.
So, can you just give us an example of some 2-3 children who have disabilities and who are having the benefits of inclusive education?
These equal opportunities must start from the basic level of education for infants and young people with disabilities. The first step for implementation of inclusive education is the facility for early identification and early intervention for disability amelioration, so that the effects of disability are not prolonged, they are ameliorated from the very beginning. Now, some children at risk, if they are recognized at birth, children should be recognized by the medical profession and referred for early intervention so that secondary disabilities are prevented.
So that means the early intervention of any kind of disability is very important, so that the earlier it is detected, the secondary disabilities can be ignored, can be prevented, and then obviously the inclusive education can be imparted to all these students.
Yes, and early intervention is important for all types of disabilities. Now, early intervention for developmental delays, sensory problems means hearing and visual impairments, and also inborn errors of locomotor disabilities due to cerebral palsy are very, very important. Now, interdisciplinary assessment and interventional support according to the special needs are needed to each type of disability. Now, these are some children going through the early intervention program. Now, a developmentally delayed child needs special support in learning fine and gross motor skills, self-help, social and linguistic skills. A child with hearing impairment needs audiometric assessment, orientation about hearing aid and its suitability, fitting and maintenance of the aid, and training to use the aid. These are the early steps which prepare the child for inclusive education. A visually challenged child will need stimulation of smell, touch, hearing, and kinesthetic sensations to compensate for the loss of vision. So here there are different types of children. They are getting inclusive education, the early intervention for preparing them to develop the readiness skills for school going. Children with cerebral palsy will require the concentration of physical and occupational therapies. Again, here an interdisciplinary team works with the children so that from the very beginning they can go into the mainstream environment.
So that means all the children with different kinds of impairments and different kinds of disabilities have special needs, and depending on those special needs, education needs to be imparted, and depending on those special needs as to what the child actually, we identify and assess his basic problem and what he needs. Therefore, in that order, the inclusive education is imparted to the students.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because an early intervention is important to prepare them to develop the readiness skills for school age. So that is very important. Now we see that the journey of special education for children with special needs started with the concept of segregation, which led to the development of special schools for different disabilities. This was also an important milestone as it led to the development of special teaching strategies for different disabilities and relevant technological support systems. For instance, for children with hearing impairment and visual impairment, lots of technological supports have been developed because of the special education facilities. Now, the principle of segregation gave impetus to big residential institutions, which was objected by Michelson and Nietzsche of Scandinavia in early 70s on humanitarian grounds. They brought in the principle of normalization and proposed that all children with special needs should, as far as possible, live in an environment which is normal for all children of their ages. The natural outcome of this concept was integration and inclusion, which has been supported now by UN Convention on Child Rights and also by the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now, emphasis of normal patterns of social, emotional, recreational and economic life for all persons with disabilities is the objective of UN CRPD. Human rights perspective of disability highlights the inherent right to dignity and fundamental rights to education for all children with and without disability. Well, India has signed and ratified these conventions, and government has come out with the following legislations: the Rehabilitation Council of India Act 92, the Persons with Disabilities Equal Opportunities Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 95, the National Trust for the Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation and Multiple Disabilities Act 1990.
So that means there are various legislations and conventions that the government has come out with to promote inclusive education and to support this whole system of education.
Yes. Now, as a response to these government commitments, several schemes with good intentions had come up. The Parliamentary Act of Universalization of Elementary Education 1974 promised free and compulsory education for all children between the age group of 6 and 14. The other program was the Integrated Education of Disabled Children, IEDCs, 1974. The National Policy of Education, NPE, helped to set the stage for integration and inclusion, and some education of children with special needs in some of the rural areas was also tried out. Now, Project Integrated Education for the Disabled, PIED, 1987, and the District Primary Education Program, DPEP, 1990, were sponsored by UNICEF and implemented by National Council of Educational Research and Training. In 2005, the HRD Ministry also prepared a plan of action for making all schools disabled friendly. The government's commitment is there, but the implementation of these promises in a huge country like India depends upon the functionaries of government, NGOs, and the public-private partnership at large.
So that means even if the government has supported the legislations, government has provided the basic structures, but still it's the basic function of the NGOs, the other agencies to provide full support for developing and promoting inclusive education system. Okay.
Accessibility by restructuring of school buildings can bring children with disabilities to schools. For retaining the children in schools, availability of support systems is essential. All academic learning has to be meaningful and relevant to life and place of work. So we have to change the whole system or curriculum. The challenges are many, as every class in every school has some children who face learning difficulties, whether due to sensory deficits, physical difficulties, lower intellectual potential, or specific learning disability. Inclusive education extends far beyond mere proximity of placing children with special needs in regular schools. It involves bringing the support services to the child with understanding and acceptance of the diverse styles of his learning and capabilities. So all children have a different style of learning and different ability to learn. Now, if educational approach is child-centered, flexible, individualized, and directed towards meaningful experiences for all children, then it can demonstrate the positivity of inclusive education, which is beneficial for all children.
So therefore right now we're discussing what basically inclusive education means, the whole concept of it. Then we also discussed that how it is important for different children with different disabilities, how we have to identify every child's special needs and then to provide them with what exactly they need. So this is all about inclusive education. We'll go on with our discussion, but right now it's time for a short break, so we'll see you after a break.
किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है, जीना इसी का नाम है। मान अपनी जेब से फकीर हैं, फिर भी यारों दिल के हम अमीर हैं। मिटे जो प्यार के लिए वो जिंदगी, जले बहार के लिए वो जिंदगी, किसी को हो ना हो हमें तो एतबार, जीना इसी का नाम है, जीना इसी का नाम है।
Welcome back after the break. Today we were discussing the concept of inclusive education and the role of various implementing agencies. And until now we've discussed what basically inclusive education means. Then we discussed how different children with different kinds of disabilities need different needs, and then how we have to identify and assess those needs and then provide a basic set of inclusive education. Then we also discussed the various legislations provided by the government to ensure that inclusive education system is set up properly. So, ma'am, we'll continue with our discussion. Ma'am, what are the basic requirements for the systematic change in a regular school to bring about inclusion?
Well, the basic requirement is the availability of appropriate support services for children with all types of special needs. The schools must have special educators, they must have facilities for diagnosing the problems, they must have facilities for providing the support by special education. Maybe not only one special educator, but if there are hearing impaired children, they will need a different kind of support. If they are visually challenged children, they will need a different kind of support. So all types, and slow learners, of course, they will need a different kind of remedial work.
So that means all kinds of professionals of all levels and all kinds of facilities, technologies should also be provided
in the schools, and that should become a basic requirement for the school. Then only inclusive education can be implemented. Again, then another requirement is trained teachers who are willing to accept children with diverse needs. Initially, the teacher training, they take the whole group as one group, and they have one style of teaching. Now, children learn with different learning, have different learning styles. So, different multi-sensory approach can be used in the classrooms. Now, resourceful facilities are very important, with a resource teacher who can guide, who can diagnose the problem a child is facing, and who can provide remedial guidance to the child and also to the regular teacher in the classroom, because every teacher can't handle all types of disabilities.
So the resource teachers are basically for individual children, for children in the individual levels?
No, resource teachers should manage the resource rooms, and the children who ever requires remedial coaching or specialized help, they should be able to work in collaboration with the teacher to provide that special support. Then appropriate teaching learning materials have to be developed. Some are actually teacher-made learning material. All the teachers must be trained to make specific teaching aids for individualized training of a child. A commitment of school management to give it a try. The basic problem when you go to the management, the principals are not ready to accept children with diverse kinds of needs, with learning disabilities or children having other problems, so they don't give admission to them. Then the teachers also must get time to plan individual educational plans for the SEN children, means special educational needs children. Regularly, the teachers are so busy in correcting and all that, they must get some time to plan in a collaboration with other teachers what individualized program for this child is going to be. Then another important point is to involve the parents. Parental involvement is very important, that because unless the parents understand the problem of the child will keep on getting negative inputs at home and his motivation level will go down.
So that means it's very important that even the parents discuss with the child. The parents are equally supportive with the child, not just the professionals, not just the teachers, not just the people who are involved in giving the education, imparting education, but the parents as well have to be equally interested and participative with the child.
Now, special learning corners in the classroom. Maybe you have a special reading area, so some children are more interested in learning through books, some children are, this is again a specialized method of motivating the children to learn, to be their own, be there in charge of their own learning. So dual teaching for slow learners, maybe either the teacher or a remedial or a special education teacher can help the child who is slow. Peer tutoring and buddy system. If you pair two children, a child who is capable, very intelligent, can be paired with a child who is having some problem, that works wonders.
Okay, so basically what we're trying to say is that there can be two friends, one may not be that intelligent, the other may be a little maybe having a little higher learning ability, so they both can communicate and interact and have a better understanding.
This has been proved internationally.
Okay.
This buddy system and peer tutoring have helped many children.
So is it that you pair the students, or is it that
either children pick up their own friends, but the teacher pairs the groups, makes them into group depending upon the need of each child. No, that is. Now, cooperative learning and project approach. Cooperative learning means working in a group and also giving letting children work in projects so that they become in charge of their own learning. They find out about the facts and become. Then another important thing which I found is encouraging competitions between groups and not between individuals. Because what happens if there is lot of competition, I've got less marks in this, the other person is getting those. But the competition between groups means houses in the system, those classes normally you have. So then the whole group gets motivated to learn.
so that means an average is taken of a group and that is compared to another average rather than individual. Okay.
Now challenges, there are lots of challenges in making inclusive education a reality. The mindset, attitude of teachers, administrators and the public at large. The attitudinal change is very important. We must see that, must start thinking that they can do, children with disabilities and without disabilities, they all learn. Then the infrastructure of the school, meaning that of accessibility, that has to be the rigidity of the curriculum. We have normally a fixed curriculum, every child has to this. So individualization or moderation, adjustment of the curriculum according to the need of the child is important. Again, the class teacher has got no support. There is one class teacher with 40 children or 50 children. So unless there is a support available, this inclusive education cannot become a reality.
So that means the most important thing is first to change the mindset of the people, of teachers, of the whole society at large, so that they should understand that different people, different children with disabilities have special needs, and to provide for those special needs we do need a set of system of inclusive education. And then we have to have the lack of infrastructure has to be improved. There has to be better infrastructure. The NGOs, the agencies have to be providing better infrastructure as well. So this is all very important so as to just go away with the challenges faced by inclusive education.
Lack of appropriate TLM, teaching learning material, is another challenge. Then rigidity of classroom arrangements. You must have seen all classes are just desk after desk, chair after chair. There's no ability. You cannot move this furniture in the class to let them work in groups. Then large number of students in the classes is a basic challenge. Then deficiency in teacher training courses. I mean, all teachers have to be trained to use the special education.
So ma'am, that means if there are lesser number of students in each class, it's definitely better for the students.
Now positive action has been, means inclusion of SEN children can be enhanced if certain teaching strategies are adopted and all teachers are trained and given practice to use them. So in our teacher training programs, it has to be built in. And these strategies are cooperative learning strategies, preparing students to take charge of their own learning, means preparing them how to find out facts. Now in the system of internet, they can be trained to find out facts and then work on the projects. Then authentic assessment leading to smart educational goals which are specific, measurable, acceptable, realistic and within time frame. This is very important. But for children with special needs, this has to be built into their individual educational programs. Then activity-based learning, teaching through play, these are all strategies which work wonders within inclusive education. Accepting different styles of students' learning. Some are visual learners, some are auditory learners, some learn by music, some learn through arts. So these are different styles. Developing an interdisciplinary team approach and also multi-level instruction in the classroom. Maybe in an arithmetic class or maths class, different students can work on different levels of problems.
So that means there are various strategies by which inclusive education can be imparted and by which it can be promoted and enhanced, the effectiveness can be improved. For example, as ma'am said, there is activity based learning and there can be various different styles of learning. Different people will learn better with different styles of teaching. For example, someone can learn better with arts, someone can learn better with visual impacts and so on. So it's very important that the basic need of a child is identified and only then is the education imparted in the systematic and organized manner.
There is positive evidence. The research evidence from Canada and USA at both pre-primary and basic levels found improved outcomes for non-disabled children with integrated learning. A Mumbai study in the slums reported that developmental indicators for non-disabled children improved with inclusion of disabled children. So I think both children with disability and without learn if they are working together. The international evidence also suggests that curriculum adaptations also have positive effect on the learning outcomes of non-disabled children. The provision of aids and appliances, assistive devices, increased efforts in developing learning and resource materials for children with special needs, and initiatives for curriculum adaptations are leading to positive efforts towards inclusive education.
So that means this was a very interesting point which ma'am just told us, that inclusive education can be equally efficient and effective for not just students with disability but also with students who are not disabled, who are just as normal. So it's equally important for all kinds of students and all kinds of children.
Now, contribution of NGOs in the field of providing special educational needs of children with disabilities is being greatly recognized even by government now. DPP and SSA have evolved a policy of linking NGO special schools with the regular schools, either as direct service providers or as resource centers for regular teachers.
So that means right now we're discussing the various concepts of inclusive education, the various legislations that have been provided by the government, that have been passed by the government to promote inclusive education. Then there was a very interesting concept of buddy learning, in which two children, one with disability, with a higher level of disability, and one with a lower level of high level of understanding, can both communicate and interact, and they can be very well effectively, they can have a good level of education. Then we also discussed what positive action has been taken to take away the challenges faced by the inclusive education. We've discussed all this and we'll discuss more, but now it's time for a short break, so we'll see you after the break.
The chief handicap of the blindness is not blindness, but the attitude of seeing people towards them. आइए जानने और समझने की कोशिश करते हैं कि बधिरांधता यानी डेफ ब्लाइंडनेस क्या है। बधिरांधता एक स्थिति है जिसमें दृष्टिहीनता एवं सुनने की शक्ति में कमी आती है तथा जिससे विचारों के आदान प्रदान और रोजमर्रा की आवश्यकताओं की पूर्ति में समस्या उत्पन्न होती है। बलराम एक 9 साल का बधिरांध बच्चा है। वो एक प्रीमैच्योर बच्चा है जिसका शारीरिक विकास उसकी आयु के अनुरूप नहीं हुआ था। वो एक निम्न वर्गीय श्रेणी से संबंध रखता है तथा 5 साल से लगातार नेशनल एसोसिएशन फॉर ब्लाइंड दिल्ली के प्रशिक्षण कार्यक्रम से संलग्न है। इन 5 सालों के अंतर्गत उसे रोजमर्रा के कामों में, हलन चलन में, उसकी शैक्षणिक जरूरतों के अनुसार संप्रेषण द्वारा प्रशिक्षण दिया गया है जिससे वो इन सब क्रियाओं में स्वावलंबी बन सके। बलराम बिना किसी सहायता के चाकू से फलों को काट सकता है। उनके छिलकों को कूड़ेदान में डाल सकता है। अपने बर्तनों को खुद साफ कर सकता है। उन्हें सही जगह पर रख सकता है। सही बर्तनों का चयन करके खुद खाना खाता है। एवं पानी की बोतल निकालकर पानी भी पीता है। इन सभी क्रियाओं में वो टेक्चुअल साइन लैंग्वेज से निर्देशों को ग्रहण करता है और अपने भावों को व्यक्त करता है। टेलर फ्रेम और ब्रेलर द्वारा गणित, पठन लेखन में भी प्रशिक्षण प्राप्त कर रहा है। सभी बच्चों की तरह उसका भी एक मनपसंद खेल है। उसे सेल फोन को अपने कानों पर लगाकर उसका कंपन महसूस करना अच्छा लगता है। कहा जाता है, वॉकिंग विद अ फ्रेंड इन डार्क इज बेटर देन वॉकिंग अलोन इन लाइट। कहने का तात्पर्य है कि वो लॉन्ग केन ट्रेवल, टैक्टाइल पाथ, ट्रेलिंग और लैंडमार्क्स द्वारा हलन चलन में भी सक्षम है और व्यायाम संबंधी क्रियाएं जैसे ट्रेडमिल, स्टैटिक साइकिल का स्वचालन भी कर सकता है। कहा गया है, द बेस्ट एंड मोस्ट ब्यूटीफुल थिंग्स इन द वर्ल्ड कैन नॉट बी सीन और इवन टच्ड, दे मस्ट बी फेल्ट विद द हार्ट.
This is Aparna. She loves chess and Shah Rukh Khan. Her best friend is Swati. She also has visual impairment.
La 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 la
This is Neeraj.
la la हवा धीरे धीरे चल रही
He plays many instruments.
सुनो जो कहानी
He loves Mohammad Rafi and cricket.
ये कहानी सदियों पुरानी है ये कहानी हमें
He also uses crutches for mobility.
धीरे धीरे
चंदा है तू मेरा सूरज है तू
This is Raj Bala.
मेरी आँखों का तारा है तू जीती हूँ मैं बस तुझे देख कर
With her husband and daughter. She loves cooking and watching TV.
सूरज है तू आ मेरी आँखों का तारा है तू
She also has cerebral palsy. Look beyond the disability. Look at the person.
Welcome back after the break. The topic of discussion for today is concept of inclusive education and the role of various implementing agencies. And until now we've discussed the concept as to what inclusive education basically means. Then we discussed the various legislations passed by the government to promote inclusive education, the various challenges faced by this whole concept, the various activities, the promotional activities which have been undertaken so as to remove these challenges and these hurdles from over here. Ma'am, now can you just tell us the various NGO initiatives that have been taken up?
I know it's important. Well, inclusive education does not mean that we do away with special education. NGO special schools can help as resource centers. Special schools can become demonstration centers, and also they can become as staff trainers. Special school facilities for developing teaching learning materials can also be used for all types of disabilities. So NGOs have a big role to play, and special schools also cannot be eliminated. They have to work hand in hand with the inclusive schools. Increasing number of NGOs are being involved with inclusive education with SSA, but still the number of NGOs in the scheme of cooperation are small as compared to the numerical requirement of essential support services. Well, different states have different policies for NGO participation, but it's evident that NGO government partnership holds good potential for expanding inclusion of children with special needs in regular schools. The teachers trained by NGO efforts are being employed in regular schools and also in SSA projects. The increased involvement of NGO is effective, but primary responsibility for providing education for all, including children with disabilities, remains with the central and state governments. Professional thinking about learning principles and theories of learning are constantly growing, and new concepts are emerging. Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences has brought a paradigm shift in the thought processes of psychologists and educators. The old theory establishing supremacy of IQ score has become redundant. According to Howard Gardner, there are 7 types of intelligences, and each individual's learning style varies with his inherent strength. Using a combination of teaching styles helps all children to learn. The word smart children, they think in words. They love reading, writing, storytelling and playing word games. So they need different types of teaching material. Number smart children think in reasoning. They love experimenting, calculating and doing logical puzzles. Picture smart children think in images and pictures. They love drawing, designing, visualizing and doodling. Body smart children think about physical sensations. They love dancing, running, jumping and gesturing. So all these styles can be used for their teaching aids. Music smart children think via rhymes and melodies. They love singing, humming, whistling, listening and tapping feet and hands. People smart children think by bouncing ideas off other people. They ask questions and then or they formulate riddles. They love organizing, manipulating, mediating, partying and leading. Now self-smart children think in relation to their needs, feelings and goals. They love setting goals, meditating, dreaming, planning and reflecting. So all these styles, different styles, they are growing. Means now I think they say there are 11 types of intelligences. To retain children in schools, learning experiences have to be joyful, leading to successes for generating intrinsic motivation. Because success is the best motivator. That is, they must get success in whatever they can do and then they are motivated to learn better. Relevant styles of learning and multisensory approach will bear positive fruits for vocational placements also. The inclusive education must extend its scope for preparing children for transition from school to place of work. That brings us to the system of pre-vocational, vocational and technical stream of education, also in an inclusive setting. The policy commitments by the government are ambitious, but the societal attitudes towards people with disabilities, weakness of existing institutions for providing support services, poor accountability mechanisms, and lack of awareness among providers of support and persons with disabilities about their rights, and failure to give proper recognition and financial support to NGO sector has led to weak implementation of services for inclusive education. We have to make a cooperative effort to remove these challenges. For implementation of inclusive education, it is important to see the child first and then the disability, the strength first and then the special needs, acceptance first and then the challenges, develop self-esteem and participation of the community. Community involvement is very important because children spend a lot of time in the community and learn from the community. The vital strategy of implementing inclusive education is to bring a systemic change in schools to evolve support services for all children, involve parents and enhance exposure to social interactions at all levels. Types of specific teaching styles in inclusive education are team teaching, supportive teaching, supplemental teaching, and working as an interdisciplinary team. You might like to, what do you understand by team teaching? Maybe team of teachers teach the school, the same child, or supportive teaching can be another person, a remedial teacher, supports the regular teacher in providing supportive teaching. And supplemental teaching means a child, if he has a special needs, he is prepared, supplemented beforehand to go in the class and learn through that. Now the curriculum, what is learned, deals about what is taught, that is the context, the teaching methods. It also involves how it is examined and how learning material used to deliver and support teaching, and the resources used to teach the content. So these are important things which have to be modified or changed to make inclusive education possible, implemented. Adjustments to curriculum are beneficial for learning of non-disabled children also. It makes the material being taught more accessible.
So that means it's very important that the curriculum does not have to be very rigid. There has to be a little flexibility in the adjustment of curriculum so as to support the needs of a child with disability as well as for a child without disability, that is a non-disabled child. It's very important. The curriculum has to be adjusted a little to support the needs of all such children.
Now, inclusive education is not a destination. It is a journey to prepare children for an inclusive society. Different schools are at different stages of this journey. Our objective is to motivate all schools to strive towards this goal. The importance of inclusive school is undeniable, but we cannot undermine the relevance of special schools. Both must coexist and work hand in hand.
So this means that even though there is a very wide importance of inclusive schools, even though inclusive education is very important, it's very important that children with disability, without disability, all work together, all study together. There has to be inclusive education. At the same time, special schools are equally important, as children with special needs do need to go to special schools at some point of time so as to get those specific benefits that can be provided by the professionals at the special schools. Okay.
To prepare them for making inclusion a reality. I think all those children have to be given those special support.
Okay, so that means we've just discussed the various concepts of inclusive education, how important it is, then what are the various legislations that have been passed by the government to promote inclusive education, the various challenges that are faced by inclusive education. Then we also discussed how there are various promotional activities and various positive aspects and positive activities that are being conducted in order to promote and enable that the inclusive education system, how it can be incorporated in the whole society. And a very important thing was the mindset of the people needs to be changed, mindset of all the people, the whole society has to be changed. They have to accept the whole concept of inclusive education. They have to understand that children with different needs, with different disabilities need special things, needs special needs, and according to those special needs, inclusive education has to be imparted and has to be provided. Then there was a very interesting concept of the buddy learning system, in which a child with a higher learning capability and a lower learning capability can work together, can study together, so that both the children have equal benefits and equal understanding at the end of the day. And we also discussed the various initiatives taken by the NGOs. We also discussed what curriculum means. Once again, as we can look at the slide, it says that inclusive schools are undeniable, but special schools are also needed. So right now we've discussed all this, and we'll discuss all more with Anupriya ma'am, but right now it's time for a short break, so we'll see you after a break.
ऑटिज्म एक व्यापक विकासात्मक विकलांगता है, जिसके लक्षण जीवन के प्रथम 3 वर्ष में ही दिखाई पड़ते हैं, जैसे असंगत खेल, असमान स्थूल एवं सूक्ष्म गामक क्रियाएं, शाब्दिक संकेतों पर अभिव्यक्ति न देना,
Where is the cup? देखो, open your eyes, open करो, open करके, open.
नियमित कार्यक्रम परिवर्तन का विरोध करना एवं अवलोकनीय शारीरिक उच्च स्तरीय या निम्न स्तरीय क्रियाकलाप। UNCRPD 2007 सेक्शन 1 ऑफ आर्टिकल 4 निशक्तता के क्षेत्र में कार्यरत प्रोफेशनल के प्रशिक्षण पर महत्व देता है। ऑटिज्म के क्षेत्र में सरकारी एवं गैर सरकारी संस्थाएं कार्यरत हैं, जो भारतीय पुनर्वास परिषद द्वारा पंजीकृत हैं। सोसाइटी फॉर एडवांस स्टडी इन रिहैबिलिटेशन एक ऐसी ही गैर सरकारी संस्था है। कनिष्क 13 साल का एक ऑटिस्टिक बच्चा है, जो इसी संस्था से प्रशिक्षण प्राप्त कर रहा है। असंगत क्रियाएं, कार्यकलापों में निरस्ता, असमान स्थूल एवं सूक्ष्म गामक क्रियाएं जैसे बॉडी रॉकिंग और फिंगर रिगलिंग उसमें देखी जा सकती है। उसे मैचिंग और पेस्टिंग, पॉइंटिंग जैसी क्रियाएं सिखाई जाती हैं।
Very good. Glass. Where is the glass? Glass. Very good. कप को टच करो जल्दी से। कप को। Where is the cup? Very good. कप में क्या करता है कनिष्क? टी पीता है। चलो ग्लास। Where is the glass? Very good. चलो बाउल की तरह, बाउल जल्दी से टच करो बाउल को। Very good. बाउल में क्या करता है कनिष्क?
तथा साथ ही साथ रोजमर्रा की आवश्यकताएं जैसे खाना, पीना, कपड़े पहनना, और व्यायाम संबंधी प्रशिक्षण दिया जाता है। ऑटिस्टिक बच्चों को भिन्न भिन्न प्रकार की कार्यविधियां उनके स्तर के अनुसार सिखाई जाती हैं, जैसे कुछ बच्चों के लिए कलरिंग विद इन वन एरिया, मैचिंग एंड आइडेंटिफिकेशन, फाइन मोटर स्किल्स, आई हैंड कोऑर्डिनेशन, कंसेप्ट ऑफ वेजिटेबल्स, फ्रूट्स, बॉडी पार्ट्स, कलर्स पर जोर दिया जाता है तथा कुछ को प्रश्न पढ़ के उत्तर देने में और रोजमर्रा की आवश्यकताओं को पूरा करने में सक्षम बनाया जाता है। इसके अलावा राइम्स, डांसिंग, सिंगिंग द्वारा लेजर एंड रिक्रिएशनल एक्टिविटीज में भाग लेने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया जाता है। इन सभी कार्यकलापों एवं प्रशिक्षण का एकमात्र उद्देश्य उन्हें स्वनिर्भर बनाना है, ताकि ये डगमगाते पांव सक्षम बन जीवन के एक एक पायदान पर दृढ़ता से आगे बढ़ें और अपनी मंजिल को पा लें। एक तारा टिमटिमाता, उसने आकाश को छू लिया। एक लौ जली कहीं, उसने अंधकार को मिटा दिया।
Welcome back after the break. Our topic of discussion for today was the concept of inclusive education and the role of various implementing agencies. And until now, we've discussed the whole concept as to what inclusive education actually means, the various legislations passed on by the government, the various challenges faced by it in the society, how the mindset of people is rigid, how it needs to be changed. Then we also went on to discussing the various activities that can be undertaken to impart and to promote the concept of inclusive education education, and now we'll move on to the role of the implementing agencies, the agencies which actually implement inclusive education, the most important being SSA, that is the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. And to discuss with that, we'll just continue with you, ma'am. Ma'am, what exactly, if you could just give us a brief description of what exactly SSA is.
Okay, this is a program of the Government of India wherein an attempt is made to bring all children from 6 to 14 years of age into regular schools. The three important components of this program are access, wherein efforts are made to provide access to schools so that all children, even who stay far off, can come to regular schools. 2, enrollment, to enroll all children from 6 to 14 years of age into regular schools, and 3 is to retain them into your school system. And when you're talking about retaining all children into schools, it is important that the schools, they gradually improve. The kind of teaching that happens inside your regular schools, the kind of learning that happens inside your regular schools, that needs to be changed. And when that changes, it is and when you're talking about all children being brought into regular schools, then obviously it also covers children with special needs or children who are disabled. So when you're talking about changing your schools, changing your teaching inside the schools, or changing your learning inside the school, then that aspect also keeps in mind the needs of children whom we call disabled or whom we call special. So this whole program focuses on access, enrollment, retention, and to improve teaching and learning inside your regular schools so as to meet the needs of all children from 6 to 14 years of age, including those children who are disabled. Now we all know that the Government of India is talking about UEE, which means that you have to bring all children to 6 to 14 years of age into regular schools. And basically to fulfill this objective, SSA has been launched. And obviously when you're talking about all kinds of children, it has to include girls, it has to include children who are disabled, it has to include children who live in far off regions, who live in remote areas. So the whole idea is to make your schools accessible for all kinds of children. And that is why SSA has included a very important component of teaching children with special needs also.
So ma'am, is it that SSA basically provides for education for children between the ages of 6 to 14 years?
Yes.
Okay, so that means the main area, the target group is basically children between 6 and 14 years, and the most important 3 things are: first, to have accessibility to the schools, second is for the enrollment into these schools, and third is the retention of the students in these schools. These are the 3 most important things that SSA basically tries to promote and ensure.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the speaker before had focused on the important acts that have already that are in place for children with special needs. The RCI Act, your PD Act of 1995, and then your National Trust Act. But there's also important the RTE, which has recently been launched, and this talks the chapter 2 of RTE gives very special focus on disabled children, and this covers all the special needs that are covered by the PD Act of 1995 and your National Trust Act of 1999. And with the coming of RTE, now no school can deny admission to any child just because he or she is disabled. We come across a lot of schools saying, your HMs and your teachers say, I'm not trained on how to teach disabled child, and our schools are not prepared to actually give admission to disabled children. Or we have set up special schools for these kind of children. But with the coming of this act, it is very, very clear that all children now have to go to regular schools, and children with special needs form a very important part of this act.
So that means it's very important that the consumers have to be made aware of these acts and all these things that are coming up, because it's basically consumer awareness which is lacked in the society, and the parents basically do not even know that such an act exists in the society. So this is a great message to the parents that any child who is disabled or special has full right to go to a very normal school and all the regular schools that exist over there right in your neighborhood. So you can enroll your student in any of the regular schools.
Right. And it's this very important philosophy is that children that learn together learn to live together. I just want to at this point explain that why was this whole move of bringing disabled children into regular school became so important. See, we have special schools in this country, which are mainly, we don't have not more than 5,000 special schools, and each special school covers around maybe not more than 200 children. So this way we cover, our reach is it's only up to 1 lakh children. But when we look at the census figures and the number of disabled children that we have around maybe 4 to 5 million disabled children in our country. So obviously your 5,000 special schools cannot reach out to such a huge number of disabled children. That is why this whole move of bringing children with special needs into regular schools started. And it is this philosophy which I think is extremely important. The children that learn together learn to live together. If you put a disabled child into a special school, that special school will take care of this child maybe for 12 years, 13 years, and after that this child is thrown into a world to which he or she has never ever been lived, and to a world to which this child has never, he doesn't even know what a normal world looks like. So if you bring a disabled child into a regular school right from the very early stages, then this child learns to live in a so-called normal world, which a special school never ever provides a disabled child. That kind of I would say, it doesn't provide a disabled child that kind of a way of experience.
So that means it's very important that a child with a disability or with a special need has been sent to a regular school, because so that when he grows up later on, then if he's been just to a special school, then when he grows up later on, he will be suddenly thrown into the normal world, and it's very difficult for him to cope up with the surroundings at that point of time. But on the other hand, if since the very beginning of the child has been going to a regular school and interacting with all kinds of children who are disabled, who are not disabled, who are normal completely, I mean all kinds of children, then it's easier for the child to grow up and move into society with all kinds of people. So therefore it's very important that the child does not just go to special school but to regular schools at the same time.
Yeah. Let me also now very briefly tell you what are the needs when you're talking about bringing all children into regular schools, and what are the essential needs that we have to take care of. Firstly, it's very important to prepare schools. It is very important that your schools have the kind of barrier-free access that we talk about. There are so many children nowadays, who use assistive devices. So then you need to have, every school needs to have at least a ramp, so that a child using a chair can use the ramp. Secondly, it's important for every school to have a trained teacher, and that is, unless and until school has a trained teacher, he or she, this teacher will not be able to teach a disabled child. So it's extremely important that your schools have trained teachers, at least those teachers who have some minimum knowledge on how to teach disabled children. Thirdly, it's important to involve parents. Without parental involvement, no child's learning can take place without involving parents, and it's all the more important when it comes to giving education to disabled children. And fourthly, effective teaching strategies. The speaker before has spoken about number of teaching ways. I'm not going to go into that, but yes, if you're talking about preparing schools, the three most important aspects are barrier-free access, trained teachers, parental involvement, and effective teaching techniques.
Okay, so that means we're just now talking about the various needs of inclusion. That is, we have to first prepare schools, then the trained and equipped teachers have to be there, then we have to involve parents as well as the community, then we have to have effective training strategies. So that means these are very important aspects, and these are the basic needs as to why inclusive education is so important today and how it's so important for the whole society. Okay, and right now, as we discussed that all the children, it's very important for the children to go to the regular schools and not just to the special schools, so that the children, when they grow up later on, they can move into the society with ease, and they can very well interact with the children similarly and simultaneously. Okay. So ma'am, who are the key players in this whole field?
Well, there are a lot of people who play a lot of important part, but here I'll just talk about four main key players. First, as I said, is the general teacher. You cannot bring a disabled child into a regular school without the teacher actually being prepared on how to teach a child who is special. Secondly, parents. It is the parents who have to increase awareness. Firstly, who have to accept that yes, as their child is special, the child has some special needs, and then thereon starts this whole process on what is it that will work with my child, what is it that will not work with my child. And third is children with special needs. Obviously, this whole move is happening for children with special needs, so they obviously play a very important role. And fourthly is your non-disabled children without special needs. Unless and until children without special needs accept your disabled children, the disabled children, for them this whole schooling process might not be very effective, because it is in the early stages of schooling that you form very important friendships. And we have seen that when disabled children, when they have got into regular school, children without special needs really accept them, and they form some excellent friendships, the excellent bonding that takes place between children with special needs and their non-disabled peers. Also, a very important part related to this whole process is that today, when we talk about so-called normal children, tomorrow at least 25% of these non-disabled children might become parents of disabled children. So it's very important that disabled children, they go to regular school, they are given equal rights, and that is how this whole process of the bonding between children with special needs, children without special needs takes place in a regular school.
That was a very important, interesting point that she just put up, that 25% of these normal children, that is the children without any kind of disability, may just grow up in future and become parents of children with disability, who have disability. So therefore it's very important that from the very beginning, a non-disabled child, a normal child has been interacting and bonding with a disabled child. It will be much easier for that person to later on accept in life that yes, even if he has a disabled child, it will be very easy to accept that whole fact. Okay,
Right.
so it's very important that parents accept first that the child is disabled. Then the other important player was a child with disability, then there was a child without disability, then there were teachers. So it's basically these four key players. It's a very integrated and systematic approach. Everything is interconnected, and everybody has to make group efforts and coordinated efforts to improve and enhance the effectiveness of inclusive education.
Right.
Ma'am, what could be the benefits of inclusion?
Inclusive education. Okay, firstly, when you talk about non-disabled children, they gain a lot from this whole process. They become aware that all children are equal, and they need to accept children who might be little different from them. Secondly, a teacher. She is the one probably who learns the most in this whole process. Her skills as teacher are really nurtured, and then she becomes an agent of change. And when she builds a rapport with a disabled child, the other children also learn to accept disabled children. Just learn to accept your disabled children. And thirdly, the teacher learns some very good classroom management techniques, which so-called special education teacher might not be well equipped, because she's only dealing with so-called disabled children. But a general teacher, which is having this whole mixed group inside her classroom, so her classroom management techniques improve a lot with this whole process. Parents, they become aware of rights. They know that today their disabled child can go into a regular school, and they also become aware of the kind of supports that are available for their disabled child. And obviously children with special needs, when they go to a regular school, they become as close to the normal children, quote unquote, as close to your normal peers. Their self-esteem improves, their self-respect improves, and it really prepares them for this whole so-called normal living inside a normal society, inside a normal world.
So that means the benefits of inclusion can be observed for children with disability who have this whole thing of self-esteem. They have a better self-esteem as they are more accepted in the whole society. Then children without disability, they come to know that they can well bond with children with disability as well. Then the parents, as they learn to accept the child with disability, as they know that the child can grow also. And also the teachers who the teachers who are in special schools just have the special education education training, as they are just dealing with children with special needs, but a teacher who's teaching in a regular school has a whole mixed group of children with or without disability. So definitely a teacher teaching in a regular school with a mixed group is definitely at a better place than a teacher who's teaching just in a special school. So they were the benefits of inclusion. Ma'am, what about the target groups now?
Okay, when you're talking about children with special needs, it's a very big group. But some of the key children with special needs are listed here below. Firstly, it can be children who are visually impaired, children who have hearing, who are hearing and speech impaired, children who have moving problems, children whom we call as children who are mentally retarded, children who have learning problems, or children who have more than one special need. It can be child can be both deaf and blind. A child can be both blind, and the child can have some associated. He can be have associated problems in learning. So it's when there are more than one special needs, and then obviously the needs of the child are more, and the parents and the teachers have to be very careful on how to deal with the child who has more than one special need.
So ma'am, this means that all the disabilities, children with all kinds of disabilities work together in one regular school. So that means all these disabilities which you just listed, every child with each disability can be in one classroom.
Well, it rarely does it happen, but there can be classroom where you might have a child who is visual as well as hearing, and there can be another child who has problems in moving or have problems in learning. So it depends. I mean, it might be there or it might not be.
But that is what the whole concept of
inclusion is all about.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, when we just talk about defining special needs, there are two kinds of visual impairment. First is blind, when the child cannot read or cannot see, and then there's a child whose vision is low. These are children who can come to your regular schools and who need some special equipment so that they can be part of your regular classroom. And then you have children who have slight problems in moving, like in polio. Then child who are mentally retarded, whose mind are not completely developed, and they might have some social behavior problems also. Children who are learning disabled are children who have chronic problems in learning, and they cannot learn in regular classroom without being given that extra support by a specially trained teacher. Then you might have children who have hearing impaired, who have problems in hearing sounds either from behind or from the sides. And for this group of children also, the teachers, the classrooms, the staff, the peers, all have to be prepared especially when they have to deal with children with different kind of special needs. When we talk about children with special needs being brought into regular school, I think it's very important for everyone to know that 45% of your disabled children can go to a regular class, can go to a general class with very small amount of support. Around 30% of your disabled children also can go to a regular class, but they would require some kind of counseling support, either from a specially trained teacher or from a counselor. So with little counseling, they can also go to a regular school.
So ma'am, this means that not all disabled students can go to a normal school.
Most of them can. Around I would say around 90% of them can. There might be 10% who are very severely disabled, like who are not even toilet trained, who are not even trained on your daily living skills. So these children might need to be given some kind of preparatory skills at home before they can be included into your regular school. But I think for children who are very severe and very profound, some level of home-based support or home-based teaching becomes important.
So are there counselors and professionals who decide as to if the student can get admission in the schools or not?
Yes, under SSA we do assessment of all disabled children, and it is through this assessment that we decide whether any particular child Can he or she go to a regular school? Does that child need some kind of preparation before he or she can go to school? Or does this child maybe needs to be at home for a little while, needs to be prepared, and then that child can go to a regular school? But also let me tell you that not all children who are severely and profoundly disabled, not all of them need to go through this home-based training. Very, very few who are very, very severe, who are very, very profoundly disabled, only those children require this kind of home-based support. But I am repeating that 90% of your children with little counseling, with your corrective aids, with little assistance from your regular teacher, with remedial teaching from a special teacher, they can go to a regular school. It is only around approximately 5 to 10% of disabled children who require who need very, very intensive support. It is those children for whom your schools might not be prepared now, and here your special schools play a very important role. These children can be referred to your special schools to begin with, and once they acquire your basic preparatory skills, then gradually they can be mainstreamed into your regular school also.
So that means just now we just discussed that mostly 90 or 99% of the students with disability can go to regular schools. There are very few children who have a very severe disability who will need proper counseling and a lot of corrective action so that they can also go to regular schools. But most of the students with disability can definitely go to a regular school. So right now we're discussing what SSA is, what are the objectives of SSA. Then we also discussed what are the needs for inclusion, the various key players who are involved in an inclusion and in an inclusive education system. So we'll discuss this and we'll discuss more now, but now it's time for a short break, so we'll see after a break.
The state of knowledge exists. The will, the capacity, and method are usually the problem. मानसिक मंदता एक ऐसी विकलांगता है जो 18 वर्ष की आयु से पूर्व कभी भी हो सकती है, जिसमें व्यवहार अनुकूलता में कमी एवं बुद्धि क्षमता 70% से कम होती है। Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. भारतीय पुनर्वास परिषद द्वारा देश भर में पंजीकृत केंद्र इस बात को प्रमाणित करते हैं। NIMH प्रादेशिक केंद्र नई दिल्ली एक ऐसा ही केंद्र है जहां छात्रों को प्रशिक्षण दिया जाता है। जिसके उपरांत वे मंद बुद्धि बच्चों की सेवा में नियुक्त होते हैं। क्लासरूम टीचिंग, ग्रुप टीचिंग एवं भारतीय पुनर्वास परिषद के नव शिखर चैनल पर प्रसारित टेलीकॉन्फ्रेंसेस द्वारा संबंधित विषयों पर विस्तार पूर्वक ज्ञान दिया जाता है। मेडिकल, ऑक्यूपेशनल थेरेपी, फिजियोथेरेपी, स्पीच थेरेपी, साइकोलॉजी और स्पेशल एजुकेशन जैसे क्षेत्रों में छात्रों को प्रशिक्षित किया जाता है। प्रयोगात्मक अनुभव एवं अभ्यास के लिए टीचर ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम के उपरांत छात्रों को मंद बुद्धि बच्चों के साथ कक्षाओं में नियुक्त किया जाता है और इंडिविजुअलाइज्ड एजुकेशन प्लान का भी आधार बनाया जाता है, जिससे वे संपूर्ण शिक्षा एवं चिकित्सा शैली को समझ सकें। इस पूरे प्रशिक्षण कार्यक्रम के दौरान विद्यार्थी जर्नल्स, न्यूज़लेटर्स, पेरियोडिकल्स, चार्ट्स, मॉडल्स, कंप्यूटर ट्रेनिंग एवं टेक्स्ट बुक्स का उपयोग कर सकते हैं। कहते हैं, कीप योर फेस टू द सनशाइन एंड यू कैन नॉट सी द शैडो। इसी बात को ध्यान में रखते हुए विद्यार्थियों को सरकारी एवं गैर सरकारी संस्थाओं में नियुक्त किया जाता है, जहां वे मंदबुद्धि बच्चों के लिए निरीक्षण, प्रशिक्षण एवं अनुसंधान का दायित्व संभालते हैं। और इसके पश्चात ये विद्यार्थी इस प्रशिक्षण का उपयोग मंदबुद्धि बच्चों के सामाजिक एवं शैक्षणिक उत्थान एवं विकास में करते हैं और एक लक्ष्य की ओर आगे बढ़ते हैं। और फिर लक्ष्य कितना ही दूर हो, फासला नजरों का धोखा भी तो हो सकता है। वो मिले या ना मिले, हाथ बढ़ाकर देखो।
हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। ओ मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday.
Welcome back after the break. Our topic of discussion for today was the concept of inclusive education and the role of various implementing agencies. And right now we've discussed the whole basic concept as to what inclusive education actually means. Then we discussed all the legislation passed on by the government. Then we also discussed the various challenges faced by inclusive education system. Then all the positive actions and measures that have been taken up so as to promote and enhance the whole system of inclusive education. We discussed also what SSA is, what basically its objective is, then who are the key players who are involved in the whole process of inclusive education. Also we discussed as to what the needs of inclusion are, and now we'll move on to ma'am, what is the framework of inclusive education under SSA?
Okay, as it's listed on the slide, this first it's important that you assess all children with special needs. Then obviously you also have to make sure that they're appropriately placed, aids and appliances, resource support, extra support to disabled children, then training of teachers, parental training, and using special schools for extra support, and barrier free access. These are some of the key aspects of IE under SSA. When you're talking about screening disabled children, it's very important that a special survey is done so that all children with special needs are actually captured. Many a time we see that parents they don't reveal that they have a disabled child. Is considered to be a stigma. So it's very important that whoever does the survey of disabled children is given some kind of training on how to talk to parents, how to detect disabled children, so that this whole process process of screening becomes much more easier. Then assessment. It's important to assess what are the needs of the disabled child. What are the kind of aids and appliances that the child needs? Where does this child need to go for that extra support? Can this child directly be taken into a regular school, or does this child first needs to be prepared for a regular school? So when you do assessment, all these important aspects are taken care of. Then comes aids and appliances. These include assistive devices like your braces, cycles, which basically allow a disabled child to go to a regular school. It just gives them some basic simple access. Then comes resource support. This is mainly provided by a resource teacher who is specially trained on how to teach your disabled children inside your regular classroom. And then, as I said before, teacher training is very important, because until a teacher is trained, he or she might not be able to manage a disabled child inside a regular school. Parental training. It's very important that parents are trained on how to take care of the disabled child at home. And then your special schools are important, because they might provide that extra support that a disabled child might need inside a regular school, or they might also be able to help your regular classroom teacher on how to manage disabled child inside a regular class. And as I said before, that barrier-free access is very important. If you really want your disabled children to have access to your regular schools, then it's important to remove those essential barriers that can prevent disabled children from coming to schools. And yes, there should be a special focus on girls who are disabled, because many a time parents, they do not come forward. They hide that they have a disabled child, because because they feel that the society might not accept that they have a disabled girl. So there should be a special focus especially on a girl who is disabled or who has a special need.
So that means the foremost important thing is for the parents to accept that the child is disabled, then to have a whole identification screening, the whole assessment of the child is supposed to be done, so as to understand what exactly his special needs are, and then to provide a resource teacher or all the special appliances, the aids for promoting and enabling the special child, the disabled child, to go to a regular school. And then also it's very important for the teachers to have special training, and as well as the parents to have special training for the teachers to be able to impart education in a proper manner, and for the parents to be able to communicate more effectively with the child at home. So it's not just important for the child to learn at school, as well as at home it's very important for the child to grow and learn. Okay.
Right.
So now, what are the features of an inclusive classroom?
Okay. As 4 or 5 features are listed here on the slide. First, it's very important when a teacher, when she's teaching teaching on a particular topic or subject, she should make it very clear that what are the key aspects of the topic that he or she is teaching. Then grouping of children is very, very important. You can make children sit in small groups, or you can also make children sit in one large group. But when you make children into small groups, it's important that you do the grouping in a very right manner. You can't put all children who are below average into one group, or children who are just average learners into another group. The teacher has to take care that she does a kind of mixed grouping, where children who learn slow, children who learn fast, or children who are average learners, they all are placed in one group. Then seating arrangement is very important. You can either make children sit in rows, or in circles, or in small groups. Then it's also important that when you're talking about of a regular classroom, that each and every child is given some kind of role. It should not be like that 90% of the children are involved and disabled children are just sitting there and they are just not considered a part of your regular classroom. So it is important to assign role to each and every child who is part of your classroom. Then you should use appropriate teaching learning material, and also in a regular classroom there will always be children who need some extra support. So as a teacher, it's very important that extra support is provided to a child inside the regular classroom. And obviously when you are when you are assessing children, you also have to take care of the assessment needs. There might be a child in your class who has problems in maybe in taking down questions from your from the board. Then you might have to give this child some kind of extra time, so that this child is able to copy from the board.
So that means the teacher plays a very important role over here. As first, the teacher has to place all the children in a group. The seating arrangement has to be made in proper order. There has to be proper organization. The teacher has to know that if there are 10% of disabled children, it's not just the 90% of the class is being active and participative, but it's very important all the 100% of the class, the disabled as well as the non-disabled children, are equally interactive and equally participative in the classroom. So that's very important, that this is what inclusive education is basically, that all the children, all kinds of children interact at the same level. So ma'am, what can be the role of a resource teacher?
Okay, the first role is that this teacher should be able to do assessment of your disabled children. When I say assessment, he or she should be able to assess that what is the level at which this child is learning. Unless until you are able to derive at this level, you will not be able to provide that extra support that a disabled child needs. Second, this teacher should be aware of what are the different kind of aids that disabled child need, and then also appropriately prepare some kind of teaching learning material. Then resource teacher also should visit school to give extra remedial coaching to a disabled child, and also visit homes and do some kind of parental counseling on the care of disabled children. This teacher should also be able to design some kind of specific teaching skills, and also prepare a plan for a disabled child. Attend monthly meetings with your regular teacher, and then discuss with the regular teacher what are the other needs of the disabled child that needs to be taken care of. So these are some of the essential functions of a resource teacher.
So that means it's very important that teacher first identifies what the special needs are, the assessment is made, then the teacher makes these special efforts to provide the aids and appliances, the technologies, everything has to be, it's basically a whole coordinated and group effort to provide the child with disability a proper special very good regular teaching environment. So what about the general teachers? What could be the role of general teachers?
Okay, now because a general teacher is a part of a regular classroom, she should prepare a list of all those children who are weak in studies, who are not performing well, and then she should refer these children for further assessment. Once the assessment is done, then one can conclude that why is the child not able to learn. Is it because the child has some kind of visual problem? Is it because the child has some kind of hearing problem? So the first role of a general teacher is to refer the child for further assessments. Secondly, she should know some basic handling of your assistive device. For example, if in your class, if a child is using a hearing aid, then she should be careful and she should see that this hearing aid is on. The other children in the classroom are not pulling the wire of the hearing aid, and to keep the hearing aid away from water. These are some of the simple things, simple tips that a general teacher can keep in mind. She can also prepare some kind of teaching learning material. She should use those teaching strategies that can be effective for all children inside the classroom, and also she should regularly evaluate and assess at what level the child is performing, which are the areas where the child is not able to learn, what are the areas where the child is able to is really performing very, very well, and then based on this performance, then devise appropriate plan for a disabled child.
So that means it's very important for the teacher to be completely interactive and completely in knowledge of what the child is doing, how much the child is learning, to know what the child's capability is, and therefore after that, so that once the teacher comes to know how much the child is learning, what his basic abilities are, she can further send him for further assessment also, and then later on a corrective plan can be taken up, proper measures can be taken up to improve the efficiency of the learning of the child. So that is how a general teacher plays a role. So ma'am, it's very important that a general teacher and a resource teacher also interact amongst each other to improve the learning of the child.
Right, right.
Okay, so what could be the models of service delivery?
Well, they can be, the models can be many, but here I've just listed 4 main models. First is your resource teacher model, which is nothing but a specially trained teacher. She gives special skills to disabled children, which they need. It can be braille for a blind child. Then comes a resource room model. Your resource teacher generally works in a resource room where she imparts these special techniques to disabled child inside a resource room. Then comes your home-based support program, which is again for children who are very, very severely disabled, and they might need some preparation at your home before they can finally come into a regular school. And secondly, the last can be that your child can be referred to a special school where again the child is prepared for a regular school, and then this child goes to so-called normal school. So these are the 4 basic models of service delivery in IE.
Okay, so that means just now we just discussed the 4 basic models of service delivery in IE. Okay, so ma'am, what about monitoring and evaluation?
When we talk about how to evaluate children with special needs, some important concessions have to be kept in mind. There might be some children who probably need more time. There might be some children who need some kind of special attention. So these evaluation techniques have to be kept in mind when a disabled child comes into a regular classroom. Some evaluation guidelines have also been framed, and anyone who wants these guidelines can get in touch with us, and we'll be very glad to give out these guidelines to whoever who wants to refer to these guidelines.
Okay, so that means just now we just discussed as to what the basic concept of inclusive education was all about, what it basically means, what are the various legislations passed on by the government to promote inclusive education, then what are the what are the challenges that are faced by inclusive education system, what are the corrective measures that can be taken up, what are the basic policies, promotional activities that can be taken up to promote inclusive education. Then we also discussed as to what SSA is, that is, it's an implementing agency, and what are its objectives, how it brings about inclusive education, how it implements inclusive education on a whole. Then we also discussed the key players who are involved in the inclusive education program. Then we discussed the framework of inclusive education under the SSA, how that is very important to be functioned. Then we discussed that how the teachers, there have to be resource teachers, general teachers, how they both have to be trained very well to teach in a whole inclusive classroom with children with disability, children without disability. So it's a whole interactive session of all the people. It has to be very coordinated, very group effort. So right now we discussed the various things that are involved, that are dealing with inclusive education. So this was all about our discussion today. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. I hope our information was useful to our viewers. For any kinds of feedback and suggestion, please get back to us on our email IDs or on our numbers. You'll be most welcome with your suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us for today. That's all for the show today.